Welcome back to another episode of Chat Sports Talk. Once again, another delay. Unfortunately, I did have some medical issues that kind of take me out of action for a bit. That's why there's a delay in the videos. Once again, once you hit a certain age, your body starts to fall apart. But besides that, this is the second video of this three-part series I mentioned when I did the CSFL video, a very unique take on a possible scenario for FBS football that would never, ever happen unless there's students really had complete control of the football aspects and the power was taken away from the conferences. I'll make sure I post a link up here on this side. You'll see it over here about that video. Interesting take. Some radical ideas of the original post, and then my twist and my journey and to get into that. This is just a second video where I'm looking back at some of my older stuff and updating the material. This is going to be my perfect 10 scenario, where I take a look at 10 conferences and devise a way to make them seem, I guess, more legit. Not really legit, I guess, better suited geographically. Because if you know of today's landscape of college football, the Big Ten is going from Rutgers to USC. ACC is going from Boston College to Miami to Stanford. SEC is in Missouri, Oklahoma, South Carolina. The Big 12's in Orlando, Tucson, and Salt Lake City. So these conferences have really gotten out of hand geographically and have gone away from the traditional aspects of old school conferences and rivalries and whatnot. I understand things kind of evolve. Certain programs get a little bit better over time and continue to attract more and more star athletes, and they want better competition. I get that. I also get that schools are chasing the money. College sports has now become more of a business instead of an amateur sport where, these very young adults are taught how to do certain things at a higher level than what they were used to previously to prepare them for the next step, both mentally and physically. But I'm not going to harp on too much about that. I'm not here to discredit any university or anyone like that. This is not the avenue. This is taking another scenario and putting it into the multiverse, much like you see in DC, Marvel, a lot of other science fiction tropes. Old TV show called Sliders was a good example of that one, where you just parallel universes, other realms, however you want to look at it. Things paid a little bit differently. This is how this particular road could go. There's a particular scenario. This is just my opinion. Like an opinions, like certain other body parts, everyone has it, and they all stink. But once again, I kind of dive into this. There's going to be some few differences between here and there. I try to keep the power schools, even ones I consider power schools now, in the power, in the group. There's some changes in that. Washington State, Oregon State now considered more likely group now, where you have BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, Central Florida, SMU as power. I'll do that right now. SMU didn't make the cut. Nothing against the Mustangs. The fact that they had that death sentence, didn't play football for a couple of seasons, and now 40 years later had a phenomenal 2024 season. Making to the ACC championship game in their first year in the conference just speaks on the level of commitment that the school went to rebuilding the reputation, rebuilding that program to where it's at now. So nothing against SMU at all. It's just location. That's all it was. So, without further ado, and me rambling on and talking about nonsense, let's dive in what you're here for. The wacky world of college realignment. This is what sometimes goes in my mind. It's too many voices in there competing to find out who's going to be the loudest and speak forward towards you. So let's start in the Big Ten. I think the Big Ten is probably the easiest one to really dive into. We'll go back to the core of the Big Ten once again, the one that everyone always knows. The Ohio State, Michigan State, Indiana, Purdue, Illinois, Northwestern, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. The core of the Big Ten. Everyone loves and hates it. Notre Dame gets added. Penn State's added like it was in our timeline. And when it went to 14, Penn State had a little say in this matter. They went east instead of west. And they brought in Pitt and Syracuse, two programs they tried to team up with earlier to form a new conference of Eastern schools before the Big East came knocking and grabbed them all. And let's go down south to the SEC. Another one's kind of an easy setup to look at. And we'll go back to the core of the SEC, the 12 they had, especially after they added Arkansas, South Carolina. They get to 12. South Carolina was a completion of a trade with ACC, with Georgia Tech. Took years to complete the trade, but it finally went through. Arkansas, seeing it right on the wall with the Southwest Conference left, joined SEC. No problem. I also looked at, they try to get into Texas, get into that market of Texas, get that fan base of Texas, the recruits of Texas, to get more exposure to SEC and maybe lure a few recruits away from Texas itself. And one of the big ways to do that is take a program that wants to get out from underneath the shadow of the Longhorns, and that's the Texas A&M Aggies. They were looking to break away from that, get away from Texas, be on their own, be the only representative of Texas in a conference. In this scenario, I went a little different. I decided to look at a different location than Missouri. Stick in the area where they're at. Now, North Carolina made the most sense, but I don't think you get anyone out from the North Carolina, out ACC. So next stop was maybe go back into South Carolina, maybe grab Clemson because they have a lot of history. Let's try to grab a power program at ACC. Florida State was another option. They already had that annual rivalry with Florida. It could work out as well. Another name brand to really look at. But I decided to go with the U in Miami. So now let's go ahead and go to the ACC. This is the one that kind of got messed up a little bit, but the core to ACC stays the same. Maryland, Virginia, Duke, UNC, NC State, Wake Forest, Clemson, and Georgia Tech. They grab Florida State. They're at 9. Now they start adding programs. Well, first thing they'll grab will be Virginia Tech because that's what Virginia wants. Bring their in-state rival in. No problem. Stretch their footprint. Grab Boston College. Also grab West Virginia. On, bring in Rutgers, so you get that New York market. If you really look at that, and then Central Florida will be the 14th member. Yeah, not seeing Syracuse and Pittsburgh in this conference now looks kind of weird. Go to the Big 12. Now they still lost A&M and Colorado. That's just, but the exodus out of this conference wasn't as extreme. Then they'll have to start looking for other programs. First thing they grab would be TCU. I mean, it's one of the major BCS busters. One of the big 3 in the BCS busters that need to be added. So you add them here, as they did in our timeline. Also, they went after Louisville, which would be kind of a stretch. But definitely a basketball program they want to look at because that helps Kansas, helps their basketball IQ and prestige kind of raise up, grabbing the Cardinals to kind of challenge the Jayhawks. And the football program's also rising. A nice sized stadium, decent location, new market. I mean, you have all that going for you. And it's not too far away, but far enough away to kind of be its own identity. And then later on, jumping to 14, that's where you look at Cincinnati, bringing Kagan Nails in conference. Another decent basketball program to help challenge the Kansas and Baylors. Also, decent football. I mean, they were the first group to make it to the 14 playoff. So now they're in the stage of the Big 12 in, the prestige that is the Power Conference. And Houston, another team, has made huge strides. I mean, they've had great successes, even on the field and on the court, especially last year for the men's championships. Off the court of Pac-12, we all know them. The Washingtons, the Oregons, the Californias, the Arizonas, Utah, and Colorado. Now, I always thought with the Pac-12 or Pac-10 at the time, was going to expand to 12, and they're going to grab BYU. You bring another champion in there. And that's why you need to bring in BYU. Put the Holy War back as a conference game. And then also Boise State. Now we're going to go into the group. I'll try, not to spend too much time. Let's go ahead and jump into MAC. The MAC, you see it as it is today. UMass became a full member. You left, became a football-only member in the Mountain West, but put everything else in the Horizon League, which you have more teams floating around there, which kind of makes sense for them. But in this scenario, both UMass and IU are here. I left it at 13 only. If you notice, all the other ones have been 14. The 14 is the max. Allows you for a 3-5-5 setup. And then we'll go out to the Mountain West. Now, this is another one that has seen a lot of turmoil. Hawaii, San Jose State, San Diego State, Fresno State, Nevada, UNLV, Utah State, Wyoming, Colorado State, Air Force, New Mexico. Bring in UTEP like we did in our timeline. As well as New Mexico State, because that makes the most sense. And they're familiar with New Mexico and UTEP annually. You got that all those rivalry games, now conference games, which opens up their non-conference schedule. Also has some history of Utah State from the days of trying to battle it out in the WAC. And then adding in Grand Canyon and Gonzaga as basketball-only members. Now, will Gonzaga really make this move? Who knows? Maybe the Pac-12 only has Boise State there for football, but Gonzaga comes in for basketball. I mean, that could be a possibility, but it's just one of those weird scenarios that could possibly happen. And with us, our current timeline, UC Davis is part of Mountain West and everything except football. But also in our timeline, Sacramento State has submitted paperwork to join FBS without a conference invite, which is right now against the rules or set in place where you're not allowed to do that unless you have a conference invite. But they're trying to put it in there. It's like, hey, we want to get up here, get a year in, and then get a conference invite. Because they're looking at the Pac-12, who wants a team that's already established in the FBS before adding someone else. And the only way to do that for Sacramento State to do that is to come in as independent for a year and then get invited to the Pac. It's a weird scenario. Good luck to you. But what if Sacramento State did get added, and they get added to the Mountain West, and UC Davis is then allowed to leave with no penalty to join the Big Sky as a full member? Now, in terms of the other schools, that's where it kind of went. I'm trying to find the best scenario. And the American, Sun Belt, and Conference USA all encompass the same region of the country. But try to find the best way to represent these three areas by maintaining their identity with certain programs and kind of moving forward from there. So then I looked at the Western teams of the American Athletics, so Memphis, Tulane, Tulsa, UAB, North Texas, Rice, UTSA, SMU, who never got the call. And they all decided to leave to create this whole new conference called the Gulf Star. They also brought in Wichita State. And most of these have history with each other. Then you bring in from Conference USA, Louisiana Tech, from Southern Miss, Arkansas State, Southern Miss, and Texas State. And then for basketball, kind of even out the numbers, get St. Louis to join. Good little niche right there around that central part, around the Mississippi to Texas area. Gives you a nice little niche of schools, a lot of history between them. The headquarters of the American, because they're based at Irvine, Texas. So then the American took their ball and go somewhere else and try to establish headquarters somewhere, maybe in Philadelphia or Tampa. But, to keep Temple, to keep East Carolina, Charlotte, South Florida, Florida Atlantic, Navy and Army as football only. And they'll try and concentrate more on the eastern side of the country and not stretch too far. Bring back UConn in as a football only. Or maybe they don't have UConn. Maybe they go to the MAC. From Conference USA, bring in Delaware. Delaware and Temple have a nice history. Western Kentucky and Middle Tennessee, give them into that Cumberland area, that really central part of the U.S. From the Sun Belt, bring in Marshall. Bring in James Madison. Bring in Georgia State. Bring in another big city. Bring in Hotlanta. At least the Sun Belt, you see a huge turnover. A lot of teams leaving, which I don't see that happening. They've really expanded, grabbed some nice members to really get that core identity to them. And really, I think the Sun Belt's probably the best suited of the three conferences, really, in terms of stability. And I just yanked that all out. I just ripped it away. But they'll keep Old Dominion, Appalachian State, Coastal Carolina, Georgia Southern, Troy, South Alabama, Louisiana, and Louisiana Monroe. Bring back Florida International. I don't think that will ever happen, but you never know. Welcome them, same Houston, who has history with Louisiana Monroe. Bring in Liberty. Bring in that other school in Virginia, like they had with James Madison. Bring in Kennesaw State. Also tapping in that Atlanta market. Bring in Missouri State, who I thought were going to go into the Sun Belt, but ended up going Conference USA. And bring in Jacksonville State. Well, that's my perfect 10. It's definitely not that. There's a few conferences that were left low on purpose, just because I wasn't going to pick up which FCS programs to plug in. To fill the holes, per se. Once again, this is alternate universe. This is not the main universe. This is not Earth 616, if you're following the MCU timeline. But it's like I said, a possible path if certain things kind of fell a different direction. Certain hurdles weren't put in place by conference hierarchy and university hierarchy didn't clash on certain things, or schools didn't want someone else to come in and take away their thunder, type of those things, and egos that get too inflated, and everything was kind of mitigated and controlled by NCAA and not by the conferences. There's a lot of different aspects of scenarios that had to play out to make this scenario work. And it's hard to really determine if those scenarios actually would pan out because of how the current setup is. But this is just one of the things I'm looking at. I know it's a weird aspect in terms of that. And to really figure out, to try to figure out the best possible scenarios and configurations to make this work. Long process. I mean, like I said earlier, you should have saw the link of my original post. It's done a few years ago. But it's one of those, things you kind of look at, you scratch your head. It's like, what was I thinking then? This is better now than it was then. A few tweaks here and there. I think this one might be a little bit better. But still, it's not perfect. And that's why I put perfect in quotation marks. It's one of those things where it's ever evolving, especially with the current landscape of college football and realignment scenarios, and how it's been a huge business right now for universities. And I'll leave it there because I got to go on for another hour just talking about that, and I won't bore you with the details. But if you like what I do and you want to comment on what transpired here, if you think my thinking is completely irrational and doesn't fit the mold at all, just leave a comment down below. Once again, this is just my opinion. This is a possible scenario that could never, ever, ever, ever happen. Could have happened, possibly. We're well past that one. It's like those Choose Your Adventure books when you were a kid. This is the pitfall we fell into. But let's hear some of the scenarios you might come up with. I mean, it's interesting how some of you guys' minds think. Some of you guys' minds are just as crazy as mine, or even crazier. What SCS programs do you think will be the next one to move up? So make a comment below. Be kind to each other. Everyone has their own opinion. Believe that. Some may be far from what you think of, but doesn't make it any more of a legitimate stand than what yours is. You also like what I'm doing. You also like what I did with this video. Go ahead, hit that thumbs up. It means the world to me. Another thing to do to help support this channel is to subscribe. It's a very easy thing to do. Actually costs you absolutely nothing. Surprisingly, in this nowadays, when we need to save a little bit of money here and there, not spending the money on subscriptions, big bonus. All you need to do is hit that subscribe button, click that bell icon, and turn on notifications, let you know next time I post any more content on my channel. And I'll see you next time on Chat Sports Talk.